Okay.
Isn't that a song?
Yo también exijo. A restaging of Tatlin's Whisper number 6. Declaration of Principles for Artistic Action. 10 instructions to activate the work Tatlin's Whisper number 6. 1. The microphone, or this piece, is open for anyone who wants to use it. 2. Each person has a minute to speak, whereupon should leave the microphone to those who follow and respect the right of others to express themselves on equal terms. 3. Each group to perform this piece can choose in what way they will indicate that the intervention time is over. We suggest clapping. That's what we're using, clapping. Right, Sally?
Sure, yes.
Clap. 4. The main rule of this work is that all reviews are welcome and the audience may not stop the intervention. If someone disagrees, can use its minute at the microphone to offer a different opinion. 5. Each person involved in the performance will speak from his or her point of view. No spokespersons or government groups will be expected. It is a public but individual action. 6. Vulgarity, swear words, curse, calls to violence, discrimination, or affronts to the integrity of individuals shall not be accepted. 7. No illegal acts or violent actions against public order accepted. 8. The length of the work is up to the public. In the event of the work spans for several hours and recurrent ideas were detected, the audience can resolve to establish a new open mic to talk about a specific topic. Whenever a new group starts, the rules will be explained again. 9. The order of speakers will be determined by the order in which the word is requested. The order of speakers should be respected. Oh, and Lynette, if you want to speak, Lynette and Diane have clipboards, you can just sign up over there. Okay? 10. The work is an art space where we all can design our desires and our human imaginaries.
I refuse to be in a world where I am held in contempt because of my imagination. I refuse to be in a world where someone in an office needs to approve what I can say, how I say it, and when I can say it. To hell with those considerations of what is the right thing to say and when it is right to say it. To say what we think is larger than us. To say what we think is larger than art. I won't ask for permission. I don't need permission from anyone to think. I don't need permission from anyone to speak. I can't live in a world that orders me to stop speaking. I can't live in a world that orders me to stop thinking for myself. We don't need permissions. We don't need seals of approval. We don't need to ask for permission to think in silence nor out loud. And if we are shut down, our voice will resonate even stronger. The time to say what we need to say is always. We will not be held in contempt because of our imagination. No permissions. The time to say what we need to say is always. No more considerations. No more permissions.
We're here today because in support of an artist, Tania Bruguera, who tried to make a work of art in public. Art is a form of speech, and we're all guaranteed freedom of speech. It is one of our basic human rights that we should not forget. I will read Article 19 of Human Rights, Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Todo individuo tiene derecho a la libertad de opinión y de expresión. Este derecho incluye el de no ser molestado a causa de sus opiniones, el de investigar y recibir informaciones y opiniones, y el de difundirlas sin limitación de fronteras por cualquier medio de expresión. Tout individu a droit à la liberté d'opinion et d'expression, ce qui implique le droit de ne pas être inquiété pour ses opinions et celui de chercher, de recevoir et de reprendre sans considération de frontières des informations et les idées par quelque moyen d'expression que ce soit. These are our rights which cannot be taken away from us, but which we can lose if we do not avail ourselves of them. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm waiting my text, but I just want to say how we all know how important it is not only to support art, but most of all to support the individual behind the art. And Tanya is a person that I think we have to support very strongly, just for her to let that speak. She's speaking for her, but indeed she's speaking for all of us, and she's speaking for the freedom of expression. So I thank you. I'm happy to be here, and here I have my text. This is a text coming from Caterina Parras. Artists like Tania Bruguera, throughout the age, have always commented and reflected on their society. This is a fact. And Tanya, more than others, has also felt this reflection deeply in their heart for many years. I think at this time of new relations and opening of dialogue, it would be good for the Cuban government to open their mind and realize that all of their citizens, including the artists like Tanya, need to be recognized and free to make their art, in whatever form that's taken, to allow them to express themselves and their art in whatever form this takes, and to embrace all of their citizens. Tanya has only brought recognition and thought to Cuba. She has only spoken for her fellow Cubans and should not be punished for this. She is a white light for Cuba, and I will add, she is a bright light for Cuba.
I am Cuban. I left my country 20 years ago after spending long time in prison. I know what happened to Tania Bruguera and every other person who said something against the system. I can tell you something. The system in Cuba is the worst things that can happen to any country. Now, I read some words in Spanish. Henry David Thoreau escribió que la desobediencia es el verdadero fundamento de la libertad. Somos libres en tanto podemos disentir de lo ya establecido. La duda es el único síntoma que nos hace ciudadanos y no una masa informe y acrítica. Tania Bruguera y el Sexto son hoy quienes encarnan esa desobediencia que tiene muchos nombres, los que la practican como un estímulo para pensar y mirar la política y la vida cotidiana con criticidad son estigmatizados y criminalizados. Para los que la temen, esa diferencia es más nociva que una bomba. Los cubanos gritones susurran en la isla. El susurro es tan permanente y colectivo que deviene en un zumbido insoportable. Hay una contaminación sónica con lo que ya no se puede vivir. Un corazón acusador que, como el de Poe, constantemente nos recuerda nuestra propia vileza al permanecer en silencio, al consentir el silencio. Tania Bruguera quería hablar públicamente un minuto. No permitírselo lo ha extendido ya hasta 150.000 minutos y sigue sumando. Muchos de los que hablamos habíamos permanecido en silencio. Se puede uno alejar del ruido de afuera, pero ¿cómo hacemos para matar el ruido de dentro? Thoreau también decía que nada cambia, nosotros somos los que cambiamos. Es posible, un minuto a la vez y un minuto a la vez. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Ahmet Ogut.
I grew up in a place where civil war was part of daily life, where safety in public space was divided into day and night, into wide roads and back streets. It was normal to have military tanks patrolling around the town. Journalists, writers, teachers were targeted and killed during daytime. Listening to music in your own language was considered as a crime. Imagine a place where primary school kids were investigated because of taking part in a competition about International Day of Peace. Growing in such circumstances of radically militarized everyday life, I am coming from a place where I learned the importance of consciousness and, more importantly, collective consciousness, when one is isolated culturally and politically. I stand in solidarity with all the artists who face criminal charges for exercising their basic human rights to freedom of expression. Thank you.
Hi, the next person is Rank Euler, and if anybody wants to sign up, I will be back here with the clipboard so you can come around and find me. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm friend of Tanya. I just want to say Castro released Tania Bruguera and the rest of the artists have been 57 years just fighting against the system and all the intellectual problem with the system. Just release Tanya and let Tanya do any performance. It's an idea only. It's not a fight with arms, it's just an idea. Release Tania Castro. Thank you.
Débora Castillo.
Hi, I'm Venezuelan artist, and I would like to name some of the political prisoners in Venezuela in this moment. Freedom for Tanya and for all of them in my country and in all the places in the planet. The list of the prisoners in Venezuela now are some of them: Leopoldo López, José Gámez, Juan de Sousa, Franklin Gutiérrez, Omar Ortuño, Tania Rebolledo, Yolmán Valderrama, Delia Colinia, Anleyín López, Ernesto Arias, Jan Arellano, Silvio Calderón, Víctor Medina, Mauro Bafuno, Manuel Morales, Iria Moreno, Dilanger Rodríguez, Marcos Arroyo, Tadeo Ariechi, Osvaldo Hernández, Jesús Salazar, José Arocha, Luis Calderón, Luis Colmenares, Carlos Esquela, Pedro Moreno, Ricardo Zapata, Antonio Ledesma, Oscar Pimentel, Pedro Perdomo, Janiel Guevara, Lewis Pérez, William Portillo, Pedro Guzmán, Ignacio Porras are only this year these prisoners. Thank you.
Hans Haka.
I will be reading a statement by the Gulf Labor Coalition. With this letter, we express our profound concern for fellow Gulf Labor Coalition member Tania Bruguera, who remains under house arrest in Havana since visiting her home country last December 2014. We join with artists around the world in urging the government of Cuba to drop all charges against Tania Bruguera, Angel Santiesteban, and Danilo Maldonado and Sexto. Gulf Labor Coalition.
Deborah Cass.
This is on behalf of Thomas Hirschhorn. Art, because it's art, is resistance. Art resists facts. Art resists political, aesthetical, and cultural habits. Art, in its resistance, is movement, positiveness, intensity, belief. 2. Art, because it's art, has the power of transformation, the power to transform each human being. 3. Art, because it's art, can create the conditions of implication beyond everything else. 4. Art, because it's art, is autonomous. Autonomy is what gives the artwork its beauty and its absoluteness. 5. Art, because it's art, is universal. Universality means justice, equality, the other, the truth, the one world. 6. Because it's art. Art, because it's art, can provoke a dialogue or a confrontation from one to one.
Carmen Peláez.
Oh. Yeah, you better fortify it. I'm realistic. On behalf of Cubans, free Cubans, and Cubans that don't know the truth yet everywhere, I want to thank everybody here for coming and standing up for my countrymen and for all people repressed by this horrible regime. I want to lay out a challenge using my minute. Every single one of you need to question the false equivalences put out by people. They need to question any regime that jails its artists. They need to question any regime that is afraid and preys on the fears of people. I am not afraid. There are Cubans on the island that have freed themselves by freeing themselves of fear. Take pity on those that still live in those cages. Look at them kindly but wisely. Don't participate, don't collaborate with people that want you to lie for the regime. Be open to the humanity of the Cuban people and people that are repressed and artists that are repressed everywhere. And go forward bravely and with joy in your heart, because we're the ones that make the world better. Thank each and every one of you, sincerely.
Deborah Fisher.
Today, I renew my own commitment to invest my public, professional, and political lives with the same depth, sensitivity, and commitment that I invest in my private life. I renew my commitment to refuse to hide inside my job, my political party, to act with one voice, to always act as one unified soul, and to live my ethics and my morality without exception. And I renew my commitment to profound empathy, to fully feel the connection between every single person here to those who are jailed right now, to know that when one of us suffers, we all suffer.
Gabriela Rangel.
Cuidadito que está.
Sí,
Está
difícil, ¿no? Well, I made a translation for Tanya because I'm a curator and a writer, and I want to recover this piece of history, and I'm going to read it bilingual. It's very short. It was written in 1954 by Fidel Castro in jail. Finally, I got power. I spent days without power, and I learned its value. I will never forget it, as I will never forget the painful humiliation of being in the shadows. I fought against the shadows, and I managed to get 200 hours of dim light made of oil in my burning eyes and my heart bleeding of indignation. Of all human barbarities, the one that I cannot conceive is the absurd. Ya tengo luz. Estuve 40 días sin ella y aprendí a conocer su valor. No lo olvidaré nunca. No olvidaré la hiriente humillación de las sombras. Contra ellas luché, logrando arrebatarles casi 200 horas con una lucecita de aceite pálido y tembloroso. Los ojos ardientes, el corazón sangrante de indignación. De todas las barbaridades humanas, la que menos concibo es el absurdo. Quiero recordarle estas palabras a Fidel Castro para que suelte a Tania Bruguera, al Sexto y a todos los que disienten y quieren respetar la libertad de expresión en Cuba. Thank you.
So just a reminder, if anybody wants to sign up, I'm back here with the clipboard. The next person is Hans Hacke.
This is my own statement. A photo on the first page of yesterday's New York Times shows two smiling presidents, President Raúl Castro and President Barack Obama. President Castro jokingly covers his ears under the barrage of reporters' questions for him. Finally, a détente between Cuba and the United States appears to be in the offing. I am not a reporter. I'm one of a great many artists around the world calling on President Raúl Castro to end censorship of the work of artists and specifically to return the passport to Tania Bruguera so that she can travel outside of Cuba. In May, she is expected to recreate in the International Pavilion of this year's Venice Biennial a work she first performed in 2000. The title of the pavilion is All the World's Futures. Tania Bruguera should also be able to hear the words of Karl Marx. In the pavilion, Das Kapital will be recited every day. Presidente Raúl Castro, por favor, escuche.
Francisca Benítez.
Arriba, Paquita.
Nuestras venas siguen abiertas y sangrantes. Nada está bien. Son demasiados los callados, son demasiados los totalitarismos, más que de izquierda o de derecha, de arriba, siempre de arriba. Nuestros hermanos mapuches son enjuiciados bajo leyes paralelas, con testigos encubiertos, intimidación, golpizas y muerte, tildados de terroristas por levantar la voz. En España ya no se puede protestar en carne y hueso. La gente ha tenido que enviar hologramas a la plaza para expresar su opinión. Y aquí, mientras nuestras comunicaciones son almacenadas por el gobierno, la autocensura silenciosamente se apodera de nuestras mentes. Es por eso que Tania y todos aquellos que con la determinación y valentía son imprescindibles. Y ese espacio de construcción y discusión que es el arte es tan vital como el agua. Gracias.
Dred Scott.
It's precarious. As an artist who's had his artwork outlawed by the United States Congress and was threatened with a year in prison for defying that law for its use of the American flag, I know what it's like to face repression. And I know what it's like to dissent. One of the things that is truly precious about Tania Bruguera is she dissents against unjust power. And that's what's really needed here. This is a country where we are witnessing again and again and again police murder after police murder after police murder. And the people that are in prison for it are those that are resisting it and those that are filming it. Ramsey Orta is just been released from jail. The one person who's done time for filming the murder, for filming the murder of Eric Garner. We need that kind of dissent all throughout society against all unjust power. And we need the courage of artists like Tania Bruguera to dissent both in Cuba and anywhere in the world where she sees that unjust power. She should be free and unmolested, she should have her passport back, and she should be freed. And we have a responsibility in this country where people are being shot down again and again and again to stand up and take Tanya's lead in fighting against unjust power. Thank you.
Nikki Columbus.
I'm proud to live in a country where freedom of speech is enshrined in the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment to our Constitution. But free speech is endangered today in the United States of America. In the state of Florida, staff at the Department of Environmental Protection are prohibited from uttering the words climate change, global warming, and sustainability. In Wisconsin, state officials are not allowed to talk about climate change no matter what they call it. The truth is that in the United States, speech is no longer free. It is expensive, very, very expensive. It has become the preserve of the Koch brothers and the fossil fuels industries. Because when billionaire corporations are allowed unlimited influence on politics, they speak at a volume that drowns out all other voices. And we, the people of the United States, are no longer heard.
Claire Bishop.
I'm wearing Tanya's t-shirt. So we don't think of our own context here as one in which freedom of speech is repressed, but I think we self-censor ourselves every day. The tenant, for example, who can't complain to the landlord about no heating or repairs in case the landlord increases the rent. The worker who can't complain about her 0-hour contract and on-call work schedule in case she gets fired. The women too scared to get abortions because of physical and psychological intimidation by pro-life advocates of compulsory pregnancy. Workers and prisoners who can't report sexual harassment and assault out of fear of retaliation. The politicians who won't defend environmentally sustainable energy resources in case they lose campaign financing and don't get re-elected. Judges that let corporate felons and tax evaders go largely unpunished, while racial minorities and the less educated are imprisoned or at worst shot for petty theft and drug possession. In each of these cases, speech is unequal and unfree because of a fear of retaliation, so it's systemic. And this abuse of power will continue to be the case until we have a government that cares less about profit and more about human equality and justice.
Sean Ekman. Sean Ekman?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Tanya is not an isolated case, but neither is this. And in Malaysia, a cartoonist was sentenced to 43 years in prison for a tweet. And in Tibet, Tibetans are arrested by the Chinese government for speaking their own language. But here in Times Square, and in Dallas, and in other places around this country, we have people speaking out. And in other places around this world, we have people speaking out. So while it's really hard to have hope, I have it. So thanks.
Carlos Martiel.
Permiso. Para mí es una enorme vergüenza estar aquí exigiendo la libertad de Tania y Danilo, porque que yo esté parado aquí exigiendo el derecho que es innato por naturaleza y que solo es negado por regímenes carcelarios, significa que en Cuba, un país que se dice democrático, aún no vive la libertad de expresión. Libertad para Tania Bruguera, libertad para el Sexto, libertad para los hombres dignos que luchan sin armas y que no permanecen en silencio, y que permanecen en silencio. A continuación voy a leer un poema que me fue encomendado acá por un artista que no pudo estar acá en estos momentos, se llama Regina José Galindo, y el poema dice: me siguen los pasos y nadie me calla, frenan mi andar y nadie me calla, son mi sombra y nadie me callan, patean mi dignidad y nadie me callan, hacen pedazos mi nombre y nadie me calla, inventan de todo y nadie me callan, me meten presa y nadie me callan, me acusan de todo y nadie me calla, esposan a gritos y nadie me callan, me meten en el hoyo y nadie me calla, quiebran los dientes y nadie me calla, extraen mis muelas y nadie me calla, me amordazan la lengua y nadie me callan, me queman el rostro y nadie me calla, me amarran las manos y nadie me calla, me cortan los pies y nadie me calla, me sacan los ojos y nadie me callan, me arrancan las uñas y nadie me callan, me queman la piel y nadie me callan, me abren las piernas y nadie me calla, se me vienen dentro y nadie me callan, sangran mis encías y nadie me calla, me duelen los golpes y nadie me calla, destrozan mis vísceras y nadie me calla, apuñalan mi corazón y nadie me calla, me seco de sed y nadie me calla, me matan los sueños y nadie me calla, me matan la vida y nadie me calla, la voz a mí me viene de adentro, de muy profundo, ellos no lo han entendido.
Immigrant movement.
Estamos unidas aquí ante ti, Tania, el grupo de mujeres en movimiento, en apoyo a la libertad de expresión, porque eso fue lo que nos enseñaste en el movimiento inmigrante, a expresarnos a través del arte. Estamos aquí también reunidas para apoyarte, esperando que regreses pronto al movimiento. Gracias.
Hi, my name is Prerna Reddy and I work at the Queens Museum. I had the pleasure of working with Tanya for the last 4 years at Immigrant Movement, and we hope that we will be able to bring her back to Corona, Queens, to work with us again. This document I'm going to read just a section from is a manifesto that was created with immigration activists, politicians and community members like Veronica in November 2011. We have been called many names: illegals, aliens, guest workers, border crossers, undesirables, exiles, criminals, non-citizens, terrorists, thieves, foreigners, invaders, undocumented. Our voices converge on these principles. We are all tied to more than one country. The multilaterally shaped phenomenon of migration cannot be solved unilaterally, or else it generates a vulnerable reality for migrants. Implementing universal rights is essential. The right to be included belongs to everyone. We have the right to move and the right to be not to be forced to move. We demand the same privileges as corporations and the international elite, as they have the freedom to travel and to establish themselves wherever they choose. We are all worthy of opportunity and the chance to progress. We all have the right to a better life. We witness how fear creates boundaries, how boundaries create hate, how hate only serves the oppressors. We understand that migrants and non-migrants are interconnected. When the rights of migrants are denied, the rights of citizens are at risk. Dignity has no nationality. Immigrant Movement International, November 2011. I'm going to invite next Sol Aramendi, who's my colleague at Immigrant Movement, to read the same in Spanish.
Thank you. Hi, hola a todos, buenos días. Se nos han dado muchos nombres: ilegales, extranjeros, trabajadores temporales, violadores de fronteras, indeseables, exiliados, criminales, no ciudadanos, terroristas, ladrones, forasteros, invasores, indocumentados. Nuestras voces convergen en los siguientes principios. Voy a leer 3 del manifiesto del movimiento inmigrante creado por Tania Bruguera. Todos estamos relacionados con más de un país. El fenómeno multilateral de la migración no puede resolverse de modo unilateral, puesto que generaría una realidad vulnerable para el migrante. La implementación de los derechos universales es esencial. El derecho a ser incluido pertenece a todos. Tenemos derecho a movernos y el derecho a que no se nos obligue a movernos. Exigimos los mismos privilegios dados a las corporaciones y a las élites internacionales, que tienen el derecho a viajar y a establecerse donde lo deseen. Todos merecemos oportunidades y la posibilidad de progresar. Todos tenemos el derecho a una vida mejor. Ahora va a leer el punto 9, Camilo.
Somos testigos de cómo el terror genera barreras, de cómo estas barreras generan odio y de cómo el odio solo sirve a los opresores. Comprendemos que migrantes y no migrantes estamos interconectados. Cuando se niegan los derechos a los migrantes, los derechos de los ciudadanos están en riesgo. La dignidad no tiene nacionalidad.
Buenas tardes a todos. Tania Bruguera, estamos aquí contigo porque fuiste fundadora del movimiento inmigrante y como mujeres de movimiento nos enseñaste a través de tu arte defendernos la expresión de libertad y darnos a través de tu música la alegría y el sentido de todo y estamos aquí siempre apoyándote. Que Dios te bendiga y que todo salga bien.
Amén.
Marta Limia.
Does it say? Wow. Ten cuidado, Nicolás. Buenas tardes. I am going to talk in Spanish because this is a problem from Latin people. And this is not just about Tania Bruguera. This is about all of us. All the things that these people are saying here get together to show us how corporation, how government, how people with power control us, manipulate us. Oh, I am speaking in English. I'm sorry. I play the plot. Cómo nos manipulan, cómo nos controlan, cómo nos quitan la voz. Esto no es una cosa a favor o en contra de Tania Bruguera. Esto es una cosa a favor de todos nosotros, porque todos nosotros tenemos derechos a expresarnos. Y quiero decir algo acerca del arte y los artistas. Los artistas suelen ser muy suficientes y eso les resta mucho. Y creo que Tania es un ejemplo de ese tipo de artista que nosotros queremos para el futuro. No todo el mundo es Tomás Sánchez o Nicolás Lara que saben ocupar un lugar que la sociedad les da. Todos queremos más, es una cosa que es humana, está dentro del ser humano. Pero tenemos que saber cómo compartir y cómo colaborar unos con otros. Está bueno ya de padres e hijos enfrentados. Ese espectáculo que dieron allí en Panamá fue algo humillante. ¿Dónde está ese pueblo que dicen tan culto que es Cuba? Gente dándose piñazos. ¿Qué cosa es eso? Esa es la manipulación a la que nos someten, no es otra cosa. Esos son los gobiernos que controlan y tienen el poder y el dinero para movilizar gente de un lado a otro. Y nosotros tenemos que darle un ya a eso. Eso es lo que yo quería decir.
Bravo, bravo, bravo.
Nicolás Lara.
¿Me aguantarás?
Sí, necesito ayuda.
Yo no hablo inglés. Esto todo el mundo sabe que es un dólar. Pero si lo miramos con los ojos de la historia, veremos que por una parte está el aparato burocrático postsoviético actual y por otro lado está el capitalismo salvaje. Contra eso hubo dos mujeres, una ya murió y otra está viva. La primera fue, y no se asusten, Tanya la guerrillera. La historia es implacable, hay que decirlo todo. Y está la Tania actual, mi amiga de generación, que ha ayudado a los emigrantes, que es lesbiana y que es una mujer valiente. Les habló, perdonen el comercial, Nicolás, conocido artísticamente como el Dumbo africano de la pintura cubana. ¡Viva Tania! ¡Viva el Sexto! Y viva mi amigo que vino hoy sin los zapatos blancos.
Rosalie Goldberg. Rosalie. Oh, right here.
For
For 20 years, Tanya has kept her own line open between New York, Chicago, Paris, London, and Cuba. She has been our information, and she's actually provided information in the most extraordinary images, as only a great artist can do. She has really shown us what the place looks like. And Tanya knows her Cuba. She is really of the people. She knows the young people. She's been there, she's created art schools, and she knows the politicians. She grew up with the politicians. Her family comes from a class of politicians. Let's not forget how important this woman, this artist, has been for keeping a language and an understanding of Cuba with sympathy. She isn't just instantly asking for change. She understands the complexities, this long, long history in the country. My message and my request and my cry to the people who are now creating or thinking about the new Cuba, recognize Tania Bruguera and the artists around her. They are your most important asset. They are invaluable. And you have to let her out of there so she can come and be with us. And one other point, everything that Tanya has ever done, she told me once, she's always done the work first in Cuba. Again, showing a braveness and openness. There was nothing hidden or clandestine. She has always said, what I do in Cuba, I do outside of Cuba. What I do outside, I do in Cuba first. So recognize this extraordinary national treasure that Cuba has in the form of Tania Bruguera.
Maureen, once again, this is a reminder, I'm back here with the sign-up sheet if you want to sign up to speak. Maureen. So, NATO.
So I speak in solidarity with Tania Bruguera. People think that freedom of expression is an easy thing to support. In the United States, we've gone to war supposedly for freedom of expression. We liberate countries. The biggest paradox of America is its conquest through freedom of expression while simultaneous history of exploitation of the global South. I'm not unaware of that contradiction as I stand here. But that doesn't prevent me from supporting artists for speaking their mind around the world. As people in the United States, we have to live in a space of deep contradiction. But it is still important for us to support the freedom of expression across this planet. From China to Cuba to the United States, from Occupy to Ferguson. The freedom of expression is at the heart of not only artists, but the future of our political dignity. And so when we support Tania Bruguera, doesn't come easy. And I know a lot of left-wing people are very sensitive to critiquing Cuba at this particular time. Well, I have to be honest, I'm tired of feeling sympathetic to governments that silence their own people, and I don't care what government it is. So we need, as artists, to support each other all the time, because the freedom of expression is not an easy thing to support, and that goes for this place at the heart of Capitol to critique that as well. Thank you.
Alex Segade.
Segade,
I'm so sorry.
I do not believe in hope. I do not believe in the future. I believe in possibility, and I believe in plans. We must plan for the possibility of tomorrow. Tomorrow contains many possibilities, most of which are bad, so we must plan accordingly.
Tom Finkelpearl.
Wow, so I just wanted to say two things to repeat what everybody else has said is not necessary. But one is just about a work of art and how a work of art can be reflexive of itself. So this is a work of art about freedom of expression, which created a moment of oppression, which created a moment of freedom. So it's sort of circling around itself. And I think if you think about political arts, that's a great work of art that can circle around in real politics with real risk for real people. And my heart is with Tanya in Cuba right now. And the other thing I wanted to say is the idea of the kind of political space that Tanya created in Corona, and to see our friends from Corona and our brothers and sisters from there, here in Times Square, with the art world, with the media. That's a successful work of social art. And I just wanted to then say Tanya is a great artist, and this is the kind of art she does, and we're all with her psychologically and spiritually and artistically is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Malik Gaines.
Rights claims are arbitrary and must be constantly arbitrated. The right of speech is the favorite right of Americans, protected almost as vigorously as the right to guns, to say whatever crazy-ass shit you want to say, an imagined equivalence of articulated sentiments. Though some speech is more equal than others, amplified by money and power, the sponsored right to lie. Our world is a world of coercive speech that shapes all conditions, unchecked by institutions, aggressively promoting histories of violence from which rights were designed to protect us. Meanwhile, many artists say so little. Their unspecific, inarticulate gestures, their free market expressivity will continue to ally with power until the earth dies.
Janice Monger. Janice.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Laura Rajkovic. I'm the director of the Queen's Museum, and I've had the privilege of working with Tania Bruguera for some time. She is one of the bravest people I know. She has spoken out in really powerful ways, and she and her colleagues must be let free. And we, as artists and cultural producers, have to support the freedom of speech and make a stand for equity and justice.
Hey, yes.
Janice Monger.
Hi everyone. Today I'm reading on behalf of Miguel Lara Hidalgo. This is a beautiful statement and it's my privilege to read it. Freedom has a price. Tania Bruguera, El Sexto, and all artists imprisoned or detained for being free know that. For advising to look beyond and into our lives. For being provocative and bringing on us the liberating conflict. Freedom is not the end of the trip. It's a constant struggle in Cuba and anywhere in our world to make our brief existence more gentle and supportive, happy and human, more creative and improving. From the different, we learn, and in the diverse, we grow. Repressing governments believe that their reason is the only reason, and assume that the human voice is like matter that can be held between bars of repression and isolation. Their obsession for temporary power blinds them, and their arrogance kills them sooner or later. The artist, on the other hand, reveals us that life, like the light, is eternal and consisting of all colors. That light, unbearable for the mediocre, is the permanent and necessary food for the living. Light is eternal, whilst the repressors are simply signed pieces of paper that disappear in the wind.
So just a reminder, if you want to sign up to speak for a minute, I'm back here. The next person is Gavin Krober.
My name is Gavin Krober, and I'm speaking on behalf of Cuauhtémoc Medina, who could not be here today. Tania Bruguera's intervention at the beginning of January 2015 was a bid to restore the voice of civil society and art in the process of transition that Cuba will partake in the near future. However, a loss of an important historical opportunity resulted from the defensive reaction of the Cuban authorities to her wish of creating a moment of public freedom. The artistic community from the continent, and in particular, those who recognize themselves with the traditions of the left, should support as a basic element of the verve of our societies the artistic activism stemming from artists such as Bruguera. In a complex context of political views and considerations over the future of the continent, it is reasonable that her performance should be controversial. That is the nature of all artistic action. But above divisions and sectarianism, we share the common basis to think that a free culture is essential for the development of our societies. So please support this letter to ask the Cuban authorities to rectify their position concerning Tania Bruguera, so that the discussion about her work can belong not only to the realm of critics' debates. Thank you.
Ángel Navarez.
So let's see, I'm here today for Marilyn Zuniga, a third grade school teacher in Orange, New Jersey, who was suspended over the weekend for having her third grade class send get well cards to Mumia Abul Jamal. I think this is ridiculous. As an educator, we all have a right to academic freedom, and we should definitely consider this an act against freedom of speech. Thank you.
María Cabrera.
Mi nombre es María Cabrera. Yo exijo que el pasaporte cubano deje de ser un instrumento de control político y de presión sobre los cubanos emigrados, y que se elimine la habilitación de dicho pasaporte, que funciona de facto como permiso de entrada a territorio cubano. Yo exijo, por tanto, una reforma migratoria cabal y completa que elimine los límites legales de estancia en el extranjero, actualmente extendidos a 2 años, y confiere igualdad de derechos a los cubanos que residen en la isla y a aquellos que viven en el exterior. Y por tanto se autoriza el derecho a la representatividad política y el derecho al voto para quienes no viven en territorio nacional, así como el derecho a invertir su capital y operar empresas privadas en su país natal. Yo exijo que cese la intimidación y represión por motivos políticos para que los padres cubanos dejen de temer por la integridad y el bienestar de sus hijos cuando estos se expresan contra el poder actual. Yo exijo que se abran los micrófonos y foros nacionales e internacionales a cualquier representante del pueblo cubano, y que nadie se autoproclame la verdadera sociedad civil, y que sean retirados los cargos contra la artista Tania Bruguera, así como contra cualquier otro individuo que cumpla pena de cárcel por expresar un punto de vista opuesto al del gobierno actual. Yo pido conciliación y respeto entre todos los cubanos, y exijo finalmente que se ventilen cívica y legalmente nuestras diferencias, para lo cual exijo que el gobierno cubano se convierta en una institución al servicio de los ciudadanos y no una institución a la cual los ciudadanos tienen el deber de servir. Gracias.
Ann Pasternak.
On behalf of Abel Ascano, to Tanya, the square. The square is not the place, but the people. You are forgotten, people that listening, people that think, people united, the square. The square is not the place, but the minds. You are forgotten, minds that listening, minds that are thinking, united minds. You use fear, I spat on you. You use abuse, I spat on you. You use mistreatment, I spat on you. You invented the prison and your right to deprive freedom. Tanya has no fear, I have no fear. We are not afraid. If you put a muzzle on me, we will bite you so hard that will cause gangrene. If you arrest me, we will tear down your prisons. If you rape me, we will fight so you fuck no more. If you kill me, my ideas will grow stronger. They will spread so fast that you drown to death. I'm not a bitch that you call country. I'm not a bitch that you call religion. I'm not a bitch that you call your ideas. Oppression, rise up the people, and the people rose. No one can stop them.
Teal Baskerville.
My name is Teal Baskerville, and I'm reading on behalf of Armando Chaguaceda. Dear young people, between the creative plurality of your social movements and the authoritarian forceps of governments like Cuba's, there's an enormous distance. The Havana of 2015 is closer to the National Palace of 1968 than the Zapatistas Comunes of 1994. What dominates is authoritarian censorship and repression, and not those supposedly unchained freedoms and utopias that the regime's propagandists sell wherever they go. Faced with such men, you are different. You have dreams, they have interests. Although you are joined by red flags, for you such invocations express a yearning for a better, more just and beautiful world. For them, these ideals are but a mask that hides an old power, old in ideas and administrators, a power that negotiates with bankers and spreads transiencies, that represses trade unionists and annual community movements, a power that for decades has been besmirched the best ideals of the left, generating confusion and disenchantment, a power that befriends Dia Ordaz and Videla, Gaddafi, and Noriega, drug traffickers and terrorists, a power that has disillusioned so many noble, creative, and socially sensitive people, marginalizing them to ostracism or exile. In the context of the still complicit and tragic silence of so many leftist comrades around the world, a power that has taken from us emotions, memories, futures, and families.
Christian Viveros Faune.
Hi, this is from George Orwell's essay Freedom of the Press, published in 1945. Unpopular ideas can be silenced and inconvenience facts kept in the dark without the need for any official ban. Anyone who has lived long in a foreign country will know of instances of sensational items of news, things which on their own merits would get the big headlines being kept right out of the British press, not because the government intervened, but because of a general tacit agreement that it wouldn't do to mention that particular fact. So as far as the daily newspapers go, this is easy to understand. The British press, mind you, this is Orwell again writing in 1945, is extremely centralized, and most of it is owned by wealthy men who have every motive to be dishonest on certain important topics. But the same kind of veiled censorship also operates in books and periodicals, as well as in plays, films, and radio. At any given moment, there is an orthodoxy, a body of question. It is not exactly forbidden to say this, that, or the other, but it is not done to say it, just as in mid-Victorian times it was not done to mention trousers in the presence of a lady. Anyone who challenges the prevailing orthodoxy finds himself silenced with surprising effectiveness. A genuinely unfashionable opinion is almost never given a fair hearing, either in the popular press or in highbrow periodicals. It always appears that they are not only those who attack it openly and consciously, but those who objectively endangering it by spreading mistaken doctrines. In other words, defending democracy involves destroying all independence of thought. These people don't see that if you encourage totalitarian methods, the time may come when they will be used against you or against you. I want to read 3 quotes of Tanya's. There are 2 Cubas, the one that's exported ideologically and the one Cubans have to live with. The second, an artist rethinks and sometimes changes the meaning of things. And the third, to which I've added a postscript, everyone in the world, whether they're in China, Cuba, Afghanistan, or New York City, is entitled to 1 minute of censor-free speech per speaker, at the very, very least. Thank you. Oop.
Robin Samuelist.
On behalf of Andrea Junta, our request for the freedom of Tania Bruguera, Angel Santiesteban, and Danilo Maldonado el Sexto is based in our support of ideals of Cuban revolution and our opposition to the unjust blockade. Free expression will contribute to Cuban time of change.
Tavia Bisher.
Hello, my name is Taba Al-Bishr and I'm from Kuwait. And I stand here today to show my respect and my gratitude to all the journalists who fought for freedom of expression throughout the Arab region. And in 2014 alone, there are at least 4 dozen journalists who were imprisoned, even for the slightest and remarks. And although freedom of speech is guaranteed by most constitutions in the Arab region, in practice they're withheld. The government and corporations own and control most mainstream newspapers and therefore withhold most important information. Scholars and officials who criticize the government are often imprisoned for crimes of libel, slander, and disseminating false information. A democratic state should and can tolerate a divergence of opinions, including the most extreme opinions and the most infuriating ones. But in practice, that is never rarely shown. Thank you.
Catherine Morris.
I'm reading a statement on behalf of Guatemala, Medina. Tania Bruguera's intervention at the beginning of January 2015 was a bid to restore the voice of civil society and art in the process of transition that Cuba will partake in the near future. However, a loss of an important historical opportunity resulted from the defensive action of the Cuban authorities to her wish of creating a moment of public freedom. The artistic community from the continent, and in particular those who recognize themselves with the tradition of the left, should support, as a basic element of the verve of our societies, the artistic activism stemming from artists such as Bruguera. In a complex content of political views and consideration over the future of the continent, it is reasonable that her performance should be controversial. That is the nature of all artistic action. But above decisions and sectarianism, we share the common basis to think that a free culture is essential for the development of our societies. Please support this letter to ask the Cuban authorities to rectify their positions concerning Tania Bruguera so that the discussion of her work belongs only to the realm of critics' debates.
Tim Tompkins.
Tim Tompkins from Times Square Alliance. From Hema Medina. Yo también exijo que se acepte el coeficiente del arte censurado con todo su valor añadido y que se respete la libertad de expresión. In English, I also demand that censored art with all of its added value is accepted and that freedom of expression is respected.
Anna Yanovsky.
Tanya is a fully committed artist. Together with her, we should all strive to imagine and put into practice cultural and social values that give priority to human aspirations rather than economic interest, personal and national salvations.
Miriam Basilio.
In Spain, they just passed a law that criminalizes all forms of protest, and I support Tania Bruguera's right to free speech and free speech in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Spain, and everywhere else in the world.
Todo régimen totalitario se erige sobre la disolución de la individualidad y sobre el miedo. Reduce y paraliza al individuo cuando le confisca sus bienes y lo aniquila definitivamente cuando destruye su voluntad individual y su capacidad para dialogar e interactuar con sus semejantes. Es entonces cuando triunfa el totalitarismo, cuando desaparecen los ciudadanos y en su lugar queda una masa sumisa, amedrentada y sin derechos. De todos los derechos usurpados al pueblo de Cuba, el que más desamparo ha provocado es la falta de libertad de expresión. Esa libertad esencial exige Tania Bruguera, consciente del potencial cívico, político y artístico que tiene su gesto, consciente de que el camino hacia la reconstrucción de una nación libre comienza allí donde una persona pierde el miedo a expresarse libremente, consciente del impacto tremendo de un gesto mínimo como es brindar un altavoz sin censura, consciente del riesgo que asume por ello. Tania nos revela el poder que existe en cada uno de nosotros. Por ello, por la capacidad de inversión del miedo de su gesto, el régimen la mantiene secuestrada en Cuba, una nación secuestrada, también hasta que la libertad de expresión deje de ser una obra.
Carmen Hermo.
Hello, I want to speak on behalf of a group of colleagues at the Guggenheim Museum. We had an amazing experience with Tanya in the fall, talking to her about this project and all of her projects, but specifically about this minute of free speech that she is hoping to give to everyone. She gave us a lot of her time. We learned so much from her in the fall, and none of us could have anticipated what had happened and how quickly things changed for her. So we miss her voice, and we want to kind of open and have this as the opening of that line of conversation that she had brought to us in the fall, and she continues to bring to us. And this silence that she's left us with has, I think, united all of us, which is important. But most of all, we want to say to Tanya that we support you, and we hope to see you back in the conversation again soon. Thank you for your strength.
Peter Ely.
Peter, that's you.
I'm reading the open letter for the right to free expression. To General Raul Castro, President of the Republic of Cuba. Since the 2nd of January 2015, the artist Tania Bruguera has had her passport confiscated and has been awaiting a trial date or judgment relating to 3 charges that have been laid against her by the Cuban authorities. This situation was preceded by her arrest on 3 occasions, together with others, after her canceled attempt to perform a new staging of the work Tatlin's Whisper in the Plaza de Revolucion. As members of the international artistic community, we are greatly concerned by the legal process that has led to this situation and by the actions that your government has taken as a consequence of a proposed artistic performance in public space that was never carried out. Tatlin's Whisper is a performance that has been staged earlier, both in Cuba and elsewhere, and its repetition at this moment in public was intended to reflect upon the new social and political moment. As an artistic action, Tatlin's Whisper draws on a long genealogy of political experimentation in the aesthetic field, especially in the area of performance art. Given Tania Bruguera's involvement and the way the performance would have been framed as an artistic action, there should be no doubt as to its artistic value. Therefore, by taking legal action against Bruguera, your government is denying art the freedom that it has won historically with great effort. We believe that art is and should remain a space for freedom, where artists must be allowed to experiment to raise questions and to touch society as a means to reimagine the world and examine its conventions and regulations. This is precisely what Bruguera's proposed performance sought to achieve. In this time of change within Cuba, we all yearn for the unjust blockade imposed on your country to be lifted as soon as possible. We wish Cuba to be independent and creative, and for its artists to have the possibility of making their voice heard in society. Accordingly, we join with artists and cultural workers around the world in asking you to ensure the dismissal of all charges against Tania Bruguera, as well as her colleagues Angel Santiesteban and Danilo Maldonado el Sexto, who are either imprisoned or facing imprisonment for exercising their basic and human right to free expression. Respectfully, and I'll read the names, Cuauhtemoc Medina, Chief Curator of MUAC UNAM, Mexico City; Andrea Huenta, Art Historian, Argentina; Miguel Lopez, Chief Curator of Teoretica, San Jose, Costa Rica; Octavio Zaya, Director of Atlantica Journal, Spain and USA; Agustin Perez Rubio, Artistic Director of Malba, Argentina; Nelly Richard, Cultural Critic, Chile; Charles Esche, Director of the Van Abbey Museum, Eindhoven, the Netherlands; Natalia Maljouf, Director of Lima Art Museum, Peru; Manuel Boraviel, Director of Museo Nacional Reina Sofia, Madrid, Spain; Vasif Kortun, Director of Research and Programs of SALT, Istanbul, Turkey; Anne Philbin, Director of Hammer Museum, UCLA, Los Angeles, USA; Jose Roca, Artistic Director, Flora Ars y Natura, Bogota, Colombia; Marcelo Arajao, Cultural Secretary of Sao Paulo, Brazil; Julieta Gonzalez, Adjunct Curator, Art Museum of Sao Paulo, Brazil; Mary Carmen Ramirez, Wortham Curator of Latin American Art and Director, International Center for the Arts of the Americas, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston; Okwi and Wieser, Director of Haus der Kunst, Munich, Germany.
So just a reminder, if anybody wanted to speak, I'm signing up people all the way back here. The next person is Jose Hernandez.
On behalf of Nuria Gale, all the words I still fall short when putting into words the helplessness and rage that this oppressive situation makes me feel. Also, to express how much I respect for Tanya, friend, artist, and fellow traveler, and more than anything, master. In the chair of Art of Conduct, Tanya demanded us to have enough courage to be coherent and consistent. Her most important lesson, as far as I'm concerned, was that of commitment. According to her teaching, in art and in life, we must put our body on top of our ideas, no matter retaliation. I'd like to end this minute with an extract of a poem by Gabriel Celaya, which Paco Ibáñez, musician and censored Spanish activist during Franco's Spain, set to music. Cuando ya nada me espera personalmente exaltante, más se palpita y se sigue más acá de la conciencia, fieramente existiendo, ciegamente afirmando, como un pulso que golpea las tinieblas. Poesía para el pobre, poesía necesaria como el pan de cada día, como el aire que exigimos 13 veces por minuto para ser y en tanto somos dar un sí que glorifica. Porque vivimos a golpes, porque apenas si nos dejan decir que somos quien somos, nuestros cántares no pueden ser sin pecado un adorno. Estamos tocando el fondo. Maldigo la poesía concebida como un lujo cultural por los neutrales, que, lavándose las manos, se desentienden y evaden. Maldigo la poesía de quien no toma partido hasta mancharse. No es una poesía gota a gota pensada. No es un bello producto. No es un fruto perfecto. Es lo más necesario. Lo que no tiene nombre son gritos en el cielo y en la tierra son actos.
Dominic DeLuc.
Dominic?
Are you? This is on behalf of Oxana Alvarez and Orlando Justo. Our support to Tania Bruguera and Danilo Maldonado as Sexto, our demand for freedom and the dismissal of any sanctions to both, is consistent with our belief in the right to freedom of expression of any artist and to all human beings. The director of the Biennial of Havana, the president of the National Council of the Visual Arts of Cuba, and the National Union of Artists of Cuba made clear their role as political commissars and censors in public statements that circulated by several media. The silence of many artists, critics, museums, and cultural institutions connected in some way to the artistic production in Cuba gives strength and legitimacy to these agencies, thus fostering limits of art and raising the flag. With revolution, everything. Against the revolution, nothing. Against this flag and for freedom of expression, we support Tanya and Danilo as Sexto.
Menon Sloan?
I just put it down there. So I applaud Creative Time in making possible this opportunity to give voice to those voices that cannot be heard. And I'm going to read one of those now, from Tamara Diaz-Bringas. Practices that are considered activist in other contexts are dissident in Cuba. Activists are denied the political agency that could emerge through interaction with other similar actions or movements. Dissidents are publicly identified, discredited, and criminalized in worn-out operations of social and symbolic isolation. The Cuban government has zealously exerted control over language use so that terms such as human rights have become unmentionable. And the epithet citizen is now used only by police officers addressing a suspect or demanding documents. According to this logic, we are only citizens in relation to a certain presumption of guilt. It is thus unsurprising that the official vocabulary has replaced activism with dissidence, a notion that Wikipedia tells us was used particularly in reference to the Stalinist purges from the 1930s onwards, and in Eastern Europe after World War II. In an essay about Soviet dissidents, I found a further clarification of the term, for which the shorter Oxford English Dictionary adds a new meaning: a person who openly opposes the policies of a totalitarian regime. I believe that Tania Bruguera's action needs to be understood in the framework of the long history of the relationship between art and activism, as a practice that gives precedence to social action. But I think that it would be also fruitful to occupy the idea of artistic dissidence. It seems to me that the concepts of political art and critical art are understood very loosely in today's Cuba. They can include anything from somewhat subversive gestures to political commentary transformed into the innocuous style of the market. Instead of that safety zone with stipulated limits and transgressions, the notion of dissident art could draw attention to the relative lack of artistic projects that openly oppose the politics of a totalitarian regime. Instead of avoiding the term dissidence and acquiescing to its official criminalization, I suggest reclaiming it and affirming the radical nature of its dissent and its radical fear, the fear of the intellectual, the activist, the citizen, the exile. I'd like to say that I feel very afraid.
Claudia Collerman?
All over Latin America, we should all fight to regain the public space. Freedom to Tania Bruguera.
Aida Shehovich?
If Tania Bruguera is being punished as an artist, attempting to make her work and exercising her freedom of expression, then where does that leave all other citizens, such as teachers, students, children, workers, and especially those who are on the margins, are invisible, such as illegal immigrants that Tanya was so fiercely fighting for here in New York. Tanya and everyone else in Cuba, you are not alone. We are with you.
Saisha Grayson.
Ooh! That would of course be me. As we stand here to support Tania Bruguera and resist the Cuban government's attempt to silence her and others, we should also be inspired by her brave act to reflect on the status of free speech in our own cultures. Standing here in Times Square, we can't ignore that in America, free speech is tied to and unreasonably amplified by economics. Following Citizens United, we can't ignore how warped the U.S. political system is, as defense of free speech and defense of corporate interests and inhuman entities has been disingenuously blurred. We must continue to fight this outrageous ruling as we fight for the protection of true free speech everywhere. And following the great successes of the boycotts against Indiana's recent anti-gay legislation, we have to strategically think about how we mobilize our own economic powers to fight for more equitable laws across the country, for women's rights, for the safety of communities against police brutality and unjust incarceration, for access to education, and the many other needs of real people against corporations. Thank you.
Once again, if you'd like to sign up to speak, just come find me back here. Coco Rico is next.
Hi, everybody. Got my shoulder. I just wanted to read a little bit from the the Declaration of Human Rights, Article 9. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Tania Bruguera has been limited in her freedom because of an idea, because of wanting to open the mic to the Cuban people so that they can express themselves, whatever they wanted to express. How can we live in a time like today where people are negated the idea to express themselves, to express their ideas to the world? That's what we need to change this world. Tania Bruguera, thank you so much for what you've done. We're all thinking of you. We're all thinking of you, Tania Bruguera, and we know that you're going to come out of this on the other side, and we're all here with you. Thank you.
Ileana.
I also demand that censored art, with all of its added value, is accepted and that freedom of expression is respected. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to come and speak for 1 minute? I'm going to read what she just read in English and Spanish. Yo también exijo que acepten el coeficiente del arte censurado con todo su valor añadido y que se respete la libertad de expresión.
Hi, I'm Sally Sved, and I'm reading a section from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in spirit of brotherhood. Thank you.
Is there any other text that we wanted to read for Tanya?
If anyone would like to speak, but would like to read from some text, there are many more articles in this
Declaration of Human Rights. If you'd like to come up and just read a section, you're welcome to. Great. Did you want to read or you have something to say?
I just wanted to say publicly and, kind of to Tanya and with her very much in my heart, to thank her for making these spaces for all of us, for encouraging this, for fighting so hard for this around the world so that it's not a privilege. And I can't wait to hug you again, Tanya, and to everyone else fighting for their freedom and for speech. Thank you.
Everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms set forth by this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory in which a person belongs, whether it is independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation or sovereignty.
The floor is yours.
I'm going to be reading an open letter by the Voice Project to Raul Castro and the Minister of Justice of Cuba. I am deeply concerned with the case brought against the performance artist Tania Bruguera, arrested before her December 30th performance in Havana's Revolution Square. She was providing an outlet for Cubans to make their voices heard and exercising their right to freedom of expression that should be afforded to her and to all citizens. Free speech and self-expression are not crimes and should not be treated as such. The charges brought against Tania Bruguera are an unjust response to a performance that consisted of little more than setting up a microphone. Furthermore, the case violates globally recognized norms protecting the rights to freedom of expression, voiced in agreements such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, all of which Cuba is a party to. And I strongly urge you to unconditionally drop the case against this artist.
My name is Lorena Marron, and I'm going to read an article on Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 7. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Red Conceptualismos del Sur statement. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so this is on behalf of an organization in South America called the Red Conceptualismos del Sur, which translates to the Southern Conceptualisms Network. And last week they issued this statement. The Red Conceptualismos del Sur wishes to express its deep concern and disapproval regarding the situation of legal vulnerability currently facing the artist Tania Bruguera in Havana, where for more than 90 days she has had her passport withheld, waiting for a statement by a public prosecutor on charges of allegedly inciting public disorder, resisting authority and incitement to break the law. We note with great concern that the artist's initiative to restage in Havana's Revolution Square the performance Tatlin's Whisper 2009, in which people are indiscriminately able to access an open microphone for 1 minute, has led the Cuban state to lay charges for what is nothing more than a legitimate social and political action in the framework of an artistic practice, entirely in keeping with countless other political art experiments in Latin America, which we research and support in the framework of Red Conceptualismos del Sur.
Ryan McNamara.
I'm going to be reading from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 19.
Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Everyone has the right to equal access to public service in his country. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage and shall be held by secret vote or by equal free voting procedures. Thank you.
Yolanda Petroselli. Take it right.
All right, let me get up here. All right, well, I'm a little agripada, but I definitely want to participate for Bruguera and all those people that they need to have the right to speak. And definitely there should be justice and there should be the right to speak. And especially as an artist, I feel like we all have to be united. That's all I want to say.
Wow.
As opposed of many's beliefs, art doesn't equal luxury. Art is freedom, and Tanya represents it. So free Tanya.
Yay.
Otherwise, we're done.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
So we want to thank everybody for coming out to Times Square today, and we want to thank you for supporting the freedom for Tania Bruguera, the other artists incarcerated in Havana in Cuba, and for artists around the world who are incarcerated, people around the world who are incarcerated for simply using their basic human right to free expression. Thank you, everybody.
Ms. Castanet.